Did the fans react to your expectations initially there?
Much, way more than I expected. The whole country has been responding much more favorable than I ever expected. It feels like I keep telling my band, it feels like I'm back on tour with Rod Stewart again, because when I was on tour with Rod Stewart, it was like we were huge everywhere we went. People asked for your autograph. You know, people, girls are screaming. And in America, you know, I get a very, very great response from the fans and from the critics. But it's not to that point yet where I walk down the street everywhere and girls are screaming and crying, you know, and it's been kind of wild. It's been kind of new and fun. I have enjoyed it. And the fans at the show last night were incredible. They didn't want us to stop playing. We had to finally turn the lights on. They kept trying to encore, and it was very exciting for me. I was expecting them to be very quiet, because I've always heard a Japanese audience is very quiet, and then they clap, and they were going berserk last night. It was really fun.
今僕らから見ると客層がですね、ギター少年はいるわ、イケイケのディスコで踊ってる姉ちゃんもいるわっていう、この辺にも象徴されたような気がするんですが、それまで全然気にならないですか？
One thing he noticed about the crowd is that he expected more a bunch of kind of guitar freaks, whereas it would seem to be not only the guitar freaks, but they were kind of like girls who could be found at discos.
Right.
A mixed bag.
I was very glad to see that. I mean, I'm a musician. When people try to call me like guitar hero in the magazines in America, or new guy or virtuoso, it scares me, because I'm really just a guy who plays a guitar. I never took a lesson. I don't try to be a guitar hero. I just try to be a good musician. I just try to be a songwriter and write some songs, maybe have an influence with some lyric. You know, I try to be all well-rounded. So I'm glad that I was able to appeal to the female fans, as well as the musician fans, and just the normal person who likes music, as opposed to just the guitar players that want to watch me play. Because if they watch somebody like Joe Satriani, then they're going to see a true virtuoso who's going to do lots of things. I mean, I just play the blues, you know.
日本だと例えばプロっぽいパンクを聴くやつはもうそれしか聴かない、もう皆さんもメタルのみみたいな、それがもう箱までバシバシ出てると思うんですけど、そういうのに抵抗ないんですか？っていうかなんかそういうなんか発想がなんか分かれてて、それ自分の中全部がまだ分かってもらえないんじゃないかみたいな、そういうふうに思ったりしないでしょうか？
A lot of times in Japan, well, one reason why he asked this is because in Japan the lines are often drawn. It's like fans of thump just listen to thump, fans of metal or hard rock just listen to that. When you have sort of that kind of an audience, it's a mixed bag. Do you ever get the feeling that they're maybe misunderstanding or not really getting all from you they should be? Maybe if it's the guitar players, they're looking at the guitar playing and not really getting the songs, the whole feel of the unit.
Well, that's a really good question. I've never been asked that before. When I was growing up to make my record, I really, when I started making records with people in Los Angeles like George Clinton and Bootsy, I loved to do that with them, but it wasn't the only thing I liked. I also loved playing with Eddie Money and Rod Stewart and producing bands like the Tubes or Warrant. I needed to get the whole spectrum as a musician, because I get too bored just doing funk or just doing rock. And if I was going to make my own album, I was going to make an album that mixed all the things I like about those styles of music. So it makes perfect sense to me that I would be able to, I wanted to be able to cross over. I wanted people who love black music to be able to respect me for, because the rhythm that I play is really true. It comes from like this old Sly Stone style, and it's not homogenized or nothing. But my rock and roll is from my heart too. So it doesn't surprise me. I was hoping that would happen. I wanted to be able to have, appeal to a bigger audience than just one that likes speed metal or one that likes funk or I just wanted to make my music more universal to all these people. So I'm glad it's that way, and I was hoping that would happen.
なんとなく、じゃあさっきも言ったようなちょっと出てましたけど、そういうなんか一つのことしかできねえみたいなっていうのは全然嫌なわけですよね。
そうです。っていうか一つのことだけやってると大変ですね。
逆に一つのことをなんか極めてやってる人みたいな、そういう人たちはどう思うんですかね。そういう人たちのことを。
I guess then maybe somebody who devotes themselves solely to a single genre, a single type of music, would be somewhat in contrast to you then. You know, you tend to spread yourself a little more thin.
I have nothing against people who do that. I'm a musician. I like to make music. You know, I'm not making music for a particular chart on a billboard or on one particular radio station. I'm just trying to be a musician again. I think too many bands try to like just be one thing, and they stop being musicians and they start becoming just rock stars or pop stars, and there's just so many bands like that. I mean, why should I do that? I want to be a good musician first and a rock star second. I kind of got a lot of that rock star stuff out of my head when I was playing with Rod, you know, and I got the private jets already, and I had all the limousines and movie stars and models and all that stuff when I was very young. So now, I don't know. If I'm going to make music, I want to make it interesting to me. Otherwise, I'll get bored. And if I have to do I think my sound has one sound. I don't think that I like sound like a Paul Abdul on one song and Van Halen on the other. I think that I just mix those influences up to where it's my own. It's a style that's unique to me and maybe a handful of others.
Right. Create your own genre.
I would like to. I'd rather be a leader of a trend than a follower at any time. Yeah.
例えば自分の中では、昨日のライブでも早弾きと早弾きいわゆる本格的なバンド早弾きとかなりソロでもすごい一生懸命使い分けてるような風にも見えたんですが、別に自分の中でそれバランス考えたりとかはしてないんでしょうか。
He, watching the show there last night, he felt that you were kind of dividing things up between the songs where you kind of showed off the chops and songs where it was kind of a song. But that's not something you do consciously, right?
I mean, I love to play, fast, but I also really try hard to play slow. And if the song, like The Harder They Come, it's like wham, wham, wham. It calls for like, you know what I mean? And then there's a song like Indian Chief, which is very slow, and I like to, it's like, I just do it because that's what it calls for. I mean, I think if you listen to the live tape of the show, and you hear the way I do the Jimi Hendrix cover, or the way I do the James Brown cover, one's rock and one's James Brown, but yet they both fit right on the same vibe together. They have the same energy, the same kind of thing. So I wasn't trying to be one or the other. I mean, but if I sat there all night and I just played wild rock, then God, how long would you want to listen to me? Or if I just played, boo all night. I mean, after a while that would get very boring. I mean, for my own personal self, if I can take a song, if my solo should be a part of the song, so like on Two Bullets in a Gun, I'm going to be like, it's going to sound like the speakers are going to blow up because that song is like, intense. But on just like that or Indian Chief, I'm going to try to be a little more melodic and a little nicer, just for my own taste, for the song, what it calls for.
なんでどういうことこだわるかっていうと、日本で今までそういうファンキーなものとハードロックなものと同じバンドが同時にやってるっていうのがあんまりなかったからなわけで、なかなかこれ日本でも、面白いけれども慣れるのにも時間がかかるような気がするんですが、そういうふうにアメリカでそういうふうに思ったことはないですか？
アメリカでも客観になるんでしょうか。Just one reason why he asked you about dividing up styles is because there haven't been very many performers who come to Japan who have sort of mixed the elements together like you do. Mix together hard rock and funk. He gets the feeling maybe it would take some people a little while to kind of get used to that concept.
Yeah.
Is that for the problem in the States at all? People,
not for the people, but for radio. Radio, big problem. Some cities I go to, I have to sort of trick radio in America. In Europe, I don't. And in Canada, I don't. In Japan, I don't. But in America, I would, if they hear a song like The Harder They Come, which is really like a James Brown Sex Machine kind of groove on the bass with like really heavy rock guitars. But they don't know that. If you tell them that, they're like, But if you just let them hear it and they think, oh, this is kind of like an Aerosmith Boogie Woogie number. This is great. Then they play it, and then you've kind of fooled them. So you kind of have to manipulate radio in America a bit because it's, they got you. You got your Bon Jovi, then you got 5 bands that sound like Bon Jovi. And then you got Motley Crue, then you got 5 bands that sound like Motley Crue. And then on these stations, you got your Paul Abdul and your Bobby Browns, and then 20 bands that sound just like them. So if you don't fit in those things, you kind of fall over here in the cracks. And I purposely made this record to try to fall into them cracks and break out of the cracks. For so many people don't have to try to copy all the popular bands, and they can be more original. In the 60s and 70s, you would hear on the radio station, you'd hear Sly Stone, and then you'd hear Three Dog Night, and then Janis Joplin or something. I mean, they had nothing to do with each other, but it was all good music, and people were creative. And now it's like, that's why in America so many people listen to classic rock now, because so much of the new rock comes out as very generic. So, I had the opportunity to try to be very original and be very free in this record. My record company gave me a lot of freedom. So, if I want to stay just doing a one style of music, I might as well do it with Rod Stewart or David Bowie or somebody who's going to do it better than me. I'll join a band like that.
They didn't give you any advice or saying, well, let's do this nice song and all, but you have to fit it in this format.
No, they knew what I was doing when I was making the album. I mean, they knew the demos, and they told me, don't worry about radio. You just try to make a great album, and I had to stick to. I had to make sure my album had a continuity, to where if you listen to it from top to bottom, every song fits with one another. It doesn't sound like here's a dance song, here's a rock song. Everything fits, and it goes from song to song. I mean, that was my responsibility to do that, and I'm having a hard time a bit, like I said, with radio in America, but there's the crossing over because the critics love it and the fans love it. So it's just a matter of time in America, I think.
そういう風なスタイルでやってるとですね、向こうでどうか知りませんが、日本だと紹介され方が必ず、今流行りのカラードってなんか言われることが多いと思うんですけど、もうかなり散々言われて、なんかもう結構嫌にそういうのがなんかカラードになることがそのまま音楽もこうなるんだみたいな、ノンカテゴリーになるんだみたいな、そういう言われ方についてはもう嫌になってます。だからその最低とかっていうか彼の体の見える知的な部分が必ずその音楽の引き合いに出されたりすると思うんですよ。語られる時にやっぱりそれはメキシコとは違うからそういう言われ方については嫌なまだ嫌なんじゃないかっていう。
When referring to your music, do a lot of people, like even in America, make the connection between your racial background and music?
Yeah.
Well, the second part of the question, then do you get sick and tired of that?
I'm sick and tired, but I don't think it really has a lot to do with my music. I mean, let's face it, I grew up in San Diego, going to school, living on the beach, surfing. And I mean, I didn't grow up with the Indian tribes and like some of my friends in New Mexico living in a teepee, man. I mean, I grew up wearing clothes, listening to rock and roll, and going to the beach and hanging out with black kids, white kids, and everybody in my school. So I was never really into my heritage until I started to get older and could appreciate it more. So my music, and it's the same with Winston on the drums. He's Dutch Indonesian, but he played rock and roll because he loves rock and roll. So it's kind of easy maybe to say, he brings in this ethnic this or that. Maybe deep down it comes from there without me realizing it, from things I'm not in control of. That could be. But I don't purposely think that that's an issue. I mean, I think it comes from when I was growing up. I used to listen to Sly Stone and Earth, Wind and Fire, and I used to listen to Al Green and Eddie Van Halen and Montrose, and these are the things that I listened to, and these are the things that programmed the way things I liked about different things, I mean, I love to talk. I sit down and I talk with Steven Tyler for hours about. He comes from James Brown, man. Steven Tyler really is a James Brown fanatic. He wants to tour with the horns and everything. And he kind of can't because of the rock and roll thing. But he comes from the same era, I think, too. These are just things we like.
逆になんかそうやって人にガバガバそういうふうにやったらせるって言われるんであれば、それをなんか利用して開き直ってなんか利用してやろうみたいなそういうふうに思ったりもしないですか。
But having people kind of expect that from you, they were feel like taking advantage of it, and saying, also maybe you'll be interviewing yourself. Oh, wait a minute, I can turn this to my advantage and say, I guess it's because of that background that I do this, or because I have Indian blood in me that I do that.
Well, maybe it could be, but I never feel like taking advantage. Then I would be just another poser, really. I mean, what would my integrity be if I was lying to you guys? Maybe, like I said, maybe it does without me really realizing it. I mean, I feel a very spiritual thing, that comes out sometimes from me, Like, and I wrote the song Indian Chief about my father, But maybe it doesn't, and like I said, I'm not aware of it, but so I can't say yes, it is the reason. And I don't ever feel like taking advantage of something like that because I mean, I don't want to start becoming a bullshit, and then I'll start believing my own lies, you know.
今話していましたインディアンチーズっていうのがそうだったりとか、あとカラーコードっていうバンド名とか、サウンドのボーカルの形が僕は最初ティックでなんかそういうのをもう開き直ってやってる人たちが思ったんだけど、そうじゃないわけですから。
The only reason he asked it because like he figured from the name like Color Code and your song Indian Chief, maybe you're kind of consciously sort of introducing that element, the ethnic element.
I mean, like I said, as I get older, I'm starting to become more aware of things, and I am getting much more into my heritage. I recently did a world peace record in England with several American Indians and people from China and Moscow and France and Israel. You know, it was really neat, and I'm starting to learn more about my background and my heritage. But I called the band Color Code because I thought the name sounded cool, and must have came from above because I just thought I was mixing. You know, I was mixing colors meaning the music. You know, I was mixing, you know, R&B with rock and roll, sort of like the way it used to be. That's where the name really came from. It didn't. That was well before I had a black drummer and a white bass player. Because that was the coincidence part, you know. Honest to God, no lying. I had the name Color Coded in late '84 when I first met Winston.
Was that right?
Yeah. I just stopped playing. We wrote a lot of the songs back then, but then I wanted to experiment more with music. That's why I went off for a while and played with Bootsy and George Clinton and Rod, and start traveling around the world so I could learn more about music, you know, and so I'd have more things to feed off of, so I wouldn't just be stereotyped, you know.
で、まあ最近最近パンパンですとか結構そういう融合ものが増えてきてると思うんですけれども、他の自分と同じようなことをやってると思われたような連中のことをどう思ってますか？
Seems like there's several other bands who are kind of fusing the elements together. You mentioned Psychofunkicals from the Bay Area. I don't know if you've heard their stuff at all.
Yeah, I know.
Maybe
Are they good?
I've heard it myself. I just heard they mix it. They're supposed to be good. Maybe another one would be like Fishbone.
A lot of those bands.
Are you compared much with these guys?
Well, not some people, but a lot of those bands, the Chili Peppers,
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Fishbone.
Yeah.
I used to, you know, I've seen those bands for years since I was very young. I come from a hard rock side, and my funk comes from the real funk from George Clinton and Bootsy. So does theirs. I guess so does the Chili Peppers. Because, I mean, I used to see the Chili Peppers hanging out when I was playing on George Clinton albums. They used to come down and hang out with us. But I come from a very hard rock side, and those bands come from much more of a punk rock, from more of the punk scene. The Chili Peppers were like a thrash. Fishbone used to be a ska band. You know, I mean, it was more like Van Halen and Montrose that did it for me, not. I've never really been into, you know, the deep underground hardcore scene. And those guys they mix their funk like it's like, you know what I mean? Mine is more just like if you made James Brown or George Clinton or Bootsy, and you made Van Halen and you made them all one, you know, and much more blues for me. I love the, you know, the blues and simpler things than you know, just the moshing and you know what I mean?
It's a good observation. That's right.
そういう人があるわけですから自分たちがロックに置いてるわけですから
そう。だから練習はどっちかというとそのファンクやるにしてもね、スラッシュっぽいファンクでね、つまりそのオーソドックスなものじゃなくてね、まあ、おそらくオーソドックスなファンクからその影響は、まあ、かなり受けてるんだろうけども、ファンクやるにしてもかなりその力入れてやるからそこは違うんだよ。だから彼の原点は確かにファンクなんだけども、それと同時にロックバンヘイレンとかモントロースとか、しかしモントロースも珍しいね。
まあ確かに昨日見てて非常になんか発作的な動きと応答するバンドだって言ってたんですよね。英語でなんていうんですか、発作的って言ってたんですけど。
でもどっちかというとチリペッパーズの方が発作的だと思うけどね。
あ、そうですね。ライブはかなり発作的ですよね。
あ、そうなの。
逆にでまあハードロックのが結構原点あるとしたらばそのハードロックやってる連中の方が逆になんか頭固くてなんか同じことをザーッとやってるみたいな、いい加減にしろお前らみたいな、そうでもないんですかね。
Then again, you know, even though you're sort of influenced by the Van Halens or the Montroses, you do have one foot firmly sort of placed in the hard rock field there. It must seem kind of aggravating to see those guys not really grow. Hard rock just kind of staying in one place.
Yeah, it's very frustrating for me as a musician. That's what me and Bill Laswell worked together. Bill heard my demo tape, and he was like, man, you know, it's what he wanted to do. But he was him and I both, we were both very, very tired of the way not only hard rock was going, but R&B music is getting to be ridiculous, you know what I mean? Everybody's just got the drum machine and the computer, and it's just like, where's the soul, man? To me, the great R&B was when Heatwave would play Groove Line, you know, and they had drums and horns, and Earth, Wind & Fire, and they had the real drums and the real rhythm, you know? Now everything's just like, you know, what Paula Abdul does, or Milli Vanilli, and Milli Vanilli makes me want to throw up. I mean, what happened to musicians, you know? I mean, and then people pay, you know, hard-earned money to go see them not fake, you know, singing to tape. And it's just getting to be ridiculous, and I just wanted to try to become, you know, get back to being a musician. That's why Bill Oswald and I worked together on that record, because he's very upset about it too, you know? It's turning into just a money thing or being a pop star thing, and people put more importance on how good you look or how nice your hair is, as opposed to, you know, if you can really play your instrument, you know, or if you have any real heart, you know.
But, yeah, everybody has limitations though, and
Right.
you're talking about hard rockers not being able to get out of their category, and then you get a guy like Bootsy, who's a great musician.
Right.
Let's face it, for everybody, everything's the funk.
Right, yeah. But
Not everybody
you can, you know, you can try to stretch things out. There's always the people that do it, and it's real. Like, you know, I can listen to Aerosmith all day long, and they do the same thing for years, but it's real. Now, I don't like it when the band comes out and tries to sound like Aerosmith, and then it's real derivative, you know. If I got to hear a band, I like the original band, you know. It can sound, it's like you got heavy metal, you know. And it's like like you said, people try to compare me to Living Colour or something like that, or Chili Peppers, you know, and it's one style, but it's really totally different, you know. And then you got heavy metal, you got Guns N' Roses, and then you got, you know, Warrant. They call heavy metal, but they're nothing alike at all. They don't sound anything alike. They don't have the same, you know, everything's completely different. So, you know, people lump things into one sum, but they are different. I like bands that do hard rock. I think that, you know, Guns N' Roses kicks ass. I just don't like the bands that try to sound like Guns N' Roses. I don't like to see the guy up there doing Axl's moves, or I don't want to, you know, those are to me or the people that do it. When someone comes to me when they want me to produce their record and they say, "Oh, you'll love this. It's so commercial. You know, you'll make money. I'll make money. It's going to be great." If someone says that to me, I didn't want to listen to the tape. I'm not interested in somebody just trying to cater to what's on the radio so they can make a buck. You know, I mean, I don't respect that. You know, if it's good and it makes a buck, hey, you know. But if you just try to do something just so you can kiss everyone's ass and get a record deal or something, I mean.
そういう時がああいうなんていうんですか、頭の硬さっていうか、それをなんか象徴するからニガラティナの人差別の歌を歌ったりとかっていうなんかもう本当にいい加減にしろって感じじゃないですかね、そういう問題に関しては。そういう連中がまたそういう歌を歌ってしまうので。
Speaking of Guns N' Roses, they've got in trouble over that song, you know, about the racial thing.
Right.
He was wondering, well, he would try to kind of tie this question to the last one, where you get these sort of hard rockers and never really move from one, basically running in place. And the problem with Guns N' Roses is, I guess, you know, they sort of showed their, not only are they sort of musically inflexible, but also kind of ignorant. You know,
Yeah. Well, I didn't really read exactly what Axl said. You know, it's funny because the day before I came here on Monday, I was in Los Angeles, and Axl and Duff and everybody was hanging out. We were all hanging out at the same club. And I don't really know him more than just hello, how you doing kind of thing. But I don't know exactly what he said, but I think there's a lot of ignorance. You know, I think that the band Skid Row, I wanted to hate that band because every time I saw the singer say an interview, he just said things that were so insensitive to, you know, to certain people, and just, you know, he's in a high position. But then when I saw them, they kicked ass. You know, I couldn't help but say, man, these guys kick ass. And, you know, they really do. So, you know, he's young, so maybe he will learn from mistakes like hitting people in the face with a bottle or something, you know, but he's young, you know, and we all make mistakes. So I think you've got to give somebody 5 years, you know what I mean? And then you got to see who's there. And if you're still around in 5 years, then you're doing something right. And if you're not, you know what I mean, then I guarantee you, like the Milli Vanillis won't be around in 5 years, those kind of bands. So you get, when people make mistakes, you got to give them a few records before you can really say. So maybe Axl Rose did that, realized that he hurt a lot of people. Maybe next time he won't do that. So you have to give somebody the benefit of screwing up a few times while they're on their way up, because we all do,
わかりました。じゃあ、最後にですね、さっきギターヒーローという話がありましたけど、ニュータイプのギタリストとして、ああいう確かなギターの専門雑誌、アメリカの、ああいう表紙飾ってなかなかね、伝えられるような伝説のギターヒーローとかでありたいんでしょうか。
You talked about wanting to be a complete musician, but would you want to be remembered as the kind of guitar player who appears on the cover of Guitar Player?
Sure. I mean, that's just my ego, man. I mean, it was, for me to be in the guitar magazines now like I am, and have people write letters to the editors talking about me, it's so flattering, because it was just a few years ago that I was, had no money and I was starving to death and living on a couch and would read these magazines, and, it was, And the other day when I got into town, I was brought over to meet Abraham Laborio and Vinny Colaiuta, and they were all in town playing with Sato Watanabe and Buzzy Featon. And for those people, when I got backstage, they were like, "Hey man, how are you?" They wanted to meet me, and I remember, it was a funny story. I actually met Vinny Colaiuta 5 years ago when I first moved to Los Angeles, and I was living on the couch in the studio where I actually met George Clinton, and I was answering the phones there, sitting there, broke and nobody, and they were in there rehearsing to come to Japan for a concert with Dan Huff and the singer from Santana and some different people. And I remember sitting in there watching, that's Vinny Colaiuta, and just going, damn, they're going to Japan tomorrow, man. Jeez, what a dream come true. And then all of a sudden I'm here in Japan and I'm hanging out with them, and it's like, wow. So yeah, you know what? If I can influence some people and people like my playing, and I'm on a guitar with them on Rolling Stone or whatever, that kind of stuff. I mean, yeah, I love that stuff, but. It's just not what it's all about. It ain't all about with Rod Stewart, I had the limos, I had the, I'd ride around with 10 naked models and clothes flying and champagne squirting all over the place, and whooping and hollering, and we'd get in the private jet and we'd fly down and throw a party in Atlanta. Those kind of things are fun, but it's just part of it. It's not really the big picture, where I used to think that was what it was all about. I used to think, God, I can't wait till I'm a rock star and I can do these things. And I was doing those things, and I realized maybe now I want to try to write some songs that can maybe help help do something for somebody. Maybe now I want to try to be a little more responsible sometimes. I like to go off the deep end partying sometimes, but I don't live for that, so.
Has anybody surpassed Eddie Van Halen? Keep on mentioning his name, but thinking back over the history of the rock guitar, first there was Hendrix and Clapton, and then there was Eddie Van Halen.
I think that it's not so much a surpassing thing. I think,
let's just say a milestone.
Eddie's,
not say a milestone.
No, I mean, because when people probably first heard Jimi Hendrix, it was like, what is this? And when people heard Eddie Van Halen, it was like, what the hell is this? I think maybe the closest to come to it is probably my buddy Joe Satriani back in the States, because Joe, not just because of the flashy stuff, but Joe is crossed a big milestone, which is opened up a lot of doors for people, musicians that don't sing. I mean, Joe can play and make a song with a guitar and make you feel like you're listening to somebody sing it, and he's able to touch a lot of people more than just guitar players, and I think that's something to be, there's something to be said for that. It's a pretty amazing thing that he can go and play in front of 10,000 people that just want to hear him play, and when you watch him, you don't really get bored, because he doesn't sit there and just noodle all day. He's like a sensitive singer, singing through his guitar, which is, it's not an easy thing to do. Where most of the guys are just up there to go, show you what they can do, and Joe's much more of a sensitive player than that. So, but it's still not to that point where like Eddie Van Halen, where even Joe, we talk about the first Eddie Van Halen album all the time. It's just
it was the songs also.
Yeah, it was just everything. It was the whole thing, But when we first heard Eruption, it was like,
it was true.
What is that? I thought it was a guitar synthesizer or something. And I didn't know what it was.
Okay, I guess that.
Great.